Hello again, baseball lovers. We're kicking off another episode where we're sharing stories from you guys, from the listeners. And I've got three really good stories lined up today to share with everyone from the fan perspective. But first, I wanted to get another fan perspective from our guy, Nico, who is one of my co hosts on our RAB podcast. Nico he lives in the Northeast, but I happen to know that Nico is a big Mariners fan. So we're going to let him kind of explain the background and history of his fandom. Nico, welcome aboard, man. It's good to see you again.
How's it going, Jason?
Doing well. We're in the early days of the off season, so we're trying to all get through this together as baseball lovers. As we head towards Thanksgiving, we have to tick off the list, right? We got to get through Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then get the Super Bowl over with, and then we can start looking ahead to spring training, right? That's kind of how this kind of how this goes. So, trying to get to Thanksgiving and get that first one marked off the list.
Yeah, I think as soon as the new year hits, we're going to be pretty much in baseball swing once we get to January 1st.
Agreed. Agreed.
You
Well, we've had
know,
a blast listening to fan stories or reading these fan stories, and I know you have a great background with baseball and a great love of the game. So, kick it off just by telling everybody kind of, you live in the Northeast, so you kind of have some Red Sox ties, but you're really a Mariners fan. So, just kind of explain how you came about your baseball fandom and the background there.
yeah. So I grew up in the Northeast, like you said, where it's freezing cold 6 months of the year. So I don't really get to enjoy baseball in the South like you, where you can throw a baseball in the backyard pretty much 12 months of the year.
True.
Um, it's November in Connecticut and it's freezing out. So it's a depressing time, even though the World Series just ended. But yeah, for me, growing up as a kid in the central Connecticut in the great Northeast, being the son of Italian immigrants, probably not the first sport that you would think I would resonate towards, right? But it happened organically. As a young kid, I'm one of three brothers, so we all played baseball. We're all close in age. My older brother started playing baseball, t-ball, like most of the guys that play ball start at the t-ball level. And as a kid, you don't really know the game too much. You don't understand it. You watch your brother play, and then the friends in the neighborhood. And I grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of kids, so baseball was very popular back in the '90s. Not that it's not popular today, but you know, again, you might not see as many kids throwing the baseball around in 2025 as you did back in the mid to late 90s. But baseball was life. From the months of April to pretty much when the World Series ended. Um, so yeah, I mean, for me, it just picking up the baseball for the first time, playing catch with my brother, neighbors, friends. It got me. It really it was just different. I played a lot of sports, as a kid, basketball. I tried soccer. That's probably what my parents wanted me to play, but it just wasn't for me. I'm American. I got wrapped up in the great American pastime. So once my parents signed me up for t-ball in little league, I had the opportunity to be part of the game, right? Go out there in the field, judge a fly ball for the first time, ground a ground ball, and swing a bat, and connecting on a pitch, and the thrill of making contact when you're 6, 7, 8 years old. It really it captures you as a kid, and I think a lot of us, especially in our group who really love baseball, know that there's just nothing better than playing catch. It's as simple as that. Playing catch is one of the funnest things. I can do it. I wish I could do it more, but unfortunately, this cold weather, you can't really do it too much in the Northeast. But so yeah, I had the opportunity to start playing as a kid, and it's never. I've never lost a love for it. I think it just started when you're again when you're playing t-ball and little league, and there is something special too, Jason, about putting on that first uniform, right? When that first team that you represent, and I remember the first team that I played for was the Orioles, And it was sort of unique at the time because when you're a kid, you kind of play a bunch of different positions on the field. You don't really know where you're going to be playing when you're 15 as opposed to when you're 6, 7 years old. And so I put the Orioles uniform on for the first time, and that was right around the same time that Cal Ripken Jr. had broke the 21-31 consecutive game appearance. So when you're a kid and you're sort of watching baseball for the first time on TV, and you're playing the game in your local town, you can't help but think, man, I want to be like Cal Ripken Jr. This guy was incredible. He was incredible. And so I when I'm sitting there at shortstop as a kid, you're like, man, I with the Orioles jersey on, you think to yourself, man, I'm the next Cal Ripken Jr.
All right.
And unfortunately, it's not that simple. But I had the opportunity to play for several different teams. And I think when you're a kid and you get to play in, like I played in the Orioles, then I played in the Giants, played in the Red Sox, and these teams, it kind of resonate with you as a kid. You start to like become a fair weather fan of these teams a little bit. And you really like, you identify players in the team. Like, when I was on the Giants, Barry Bonds was Barry Bonds, and we know how great he was, steroids or not. So I loved it as a kid, and I think as you get older and you mature, you appreciate the game even more and its history and all the players that you watched as a kid. I think unfortunately I wasn't able to go too far in baseball. I think, after my teenage years, it pretty much dissolved, and you sort of enter the workforce, and it becomes, it doesn't become, it doesn't become what you want it to be. I think every kid's dream is to become a Major League Baseball player. At least that's what they tell their parents. And that did not happen. But again, I was a pretty good ball player. I think I was, I played on, the All-Star team, and I was able to travel with the team. And one more, another thing too, Jason, I had the opportunity, I lived in a town where we had a minor league team local to my area. I was literally not even 10 minutes away from the New Britain Rockcats, which was formerly the AA affiliate of the Minnesota Twins. So I spent a lot of my younger years watching some really great future ball players for the Twins organization. Guys like Torrey Hunter, Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau, amongst many others, even as recently as Byron Buxton. So I had an opportunity to watch a lot of these great players play, and everything kind of it was just a great time to play the game and have a team in the area that I can, go to the ballpark. And it was only like $5 to get in, which doesn't exist anymore. But that was a really big part of my fandom, was watching so many great players who went on to have great major league professional careers. So that was something really special too.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I feel like I missed out. I hear that from a lot of guys about their little league experience where the teams were named after major league teams. So my T-ball team was the Braves. I mentioned that in the first episode of our fans series. But after that, the teams I played for became corporately sponsored. So you played for Coca-Cola or bank, whatever bank was big at the time, like, so we didn't have the team names. So I kind of missed out except for my first team. So that's really cool. So tell us, you're in the Northeast there in Connecticut where it's nice and cold, but how did you become a Mariners fan?
So I'm kind of different than the average Northeastern New England person. Most of, pretty much everybody around here is either a Red Sox, Yankees, or Mets fan. And I sort of align myself with players more than the specific team or region. I'm kind of like that with all sports. Maybe it's my own way of being a thorn for the people around me. I don't want to hop on the bandwagon.
Right.
I mean, I've always supported the Red Sox. They're kind of my hometown team. So when they're doing well, I enjoy watching them. They've obviously had a great last 20 years or so. But for me, when I started watching baseball, especially on TV, I would watch as many games as I could, and I remember watching the Mariners for the first time, and the players is what attracted me to the team. Ken Griffey Jr., Joey Cora, Edgar Martinez, and a lot of times when you look at sports, you just kind of gravitate towards a group of players more so than a region, than just saying, hey, I'm a Red Sox fan because I live next to Boston, or I'm a Yankees fan because I'm next to New York City. So it was really just the players, and that really drew me to the team. Even Ichiro, all the way up to King Felix. I just became a fan of the team, and it's sort of unique to support a team that's geographically nowhere, quite frankly, the opposite sides of the country.
Right,
But
right.
I just enjoyed watching the team and the players, and I just kind of, as a kid, I told myself, I said, I think I'm a Mariners fan, and I was, and I've always have been, um, which isn't a great thing, right? They haven't won anything, but I think it still draws you to them. Makes you more excited. The fact that they haven't won, you become invested in the team, and and then when they travel to this part of the country on away trips, you try to watch them play.
Yeah. So kind of building on that, tell us about the emotional roller coaster that was the 2025 season for Seattle Mariners fans and how it ended.
It was a blast. It was obviously obviously a really tough ending, but I think you have to appreciate that was the furthest they went in their history, and there's only so many teams that are there. There's only one team that's ultimately happy at the end. As much as other teams have good seasons and good runs, there's only one team that wins, and there's 29 other teams that are disappointed. So, the Mariners were one of the last four. They were one, I would say, 6 outs away from getting to a World Series. And I think right now, I think the organization and the team is probably in the best position they've been in a very, very long time, maybe ever.
Yeah.
So, I think the future is going to be exciting for Seattle, and I'm looking forward to it. And like I mentioned, I like all kinds of players in baseball. I support all different kinds of teams. I think you share the same mindset as I do. We are fans of baseball, maybe more than anything. So there's teams and players that we cheer for beyond our favorite team, which is which is what makes us so in love with the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, you're giving me some great segues here. We often refer to baseball as I've got this on a T-shirt on our site, America's longest love affair. Right? Baseball really started like right after the Civil War. So I mean, it's been around almost as long as the USA. But what part of that romantic feeling about the game resonates with you the most? What is it about baseball, particularly, that you feel like makes it so ingrained in us as Americans?
Well, like you said, it's been played for such a long time. I think when you play baseball when you play on a team, you there's so much that there's so much importance for everyone on the diamond, whether you're pitching or catching or playing the infield or outfield. It's to me, it's the best game because everybody plays such a pivotal role. A lot of our people will say, "Well, baseball is boring." It's like, have you played baseball? Like you might be out in right field and you might get almost no action, but that one ball that comes to you, you got to make a play. And that goes with when you go up to the plate and you're up to hit, and the importance of drawing a walk or doing something positive. Baseball is a game of so much anxiety and stress that I really marvel at the guys that do it at the highest level, because when you play the game, it's whether it's 6 innings as a little leaguer or 9 innings as a major leaguer, there's so much stress and anxiety. You're living and dying by every pitch,
Yeah.
and it's very easy to get in your head. It's such a confidence game. It really is. It's all about confidence. The best players in baseball, at the top of their game, will go on slumps
Oh yeah.
because it's such a mental game. And then when you're locked in and you're confident, it plays such a big factor. It's such a confidence game. But so I think with baseball, some of the stuff that's really romantic about it, I really love opening day. That's something that always resonated with me. Seeing the banners all around the stadium. That first game where everybody's 0-0, 0-0, and everybody has a chance. And all the fans are optimistic, no matter if you're a Yankees fan, no matter if you're a Marlins fan. For that one day, you get to think, maybe this is our year.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll count the days to opening day, 2026. Is there like a specific player? You mentioned the players that you kind of gravitated towards with the Mariners. Is there one specific player that really made you fall kind of deeper in love with the game? If you had to pick one of those 90s Mariners guys, maybe was it Griffey? Was it Edgar Martinez or somebody else?
I think there was a lot that I can really pinpoint as far as the past and the present. You know, I, I loved Cal Ripken Jr. because he was like, as a kid, you're like this, he was the Iron Man, right? That was his nickname.
Yeah.
He played every single day, and that's something that's unheard of today, right? So that's a guy I really, enjoyed watching. He was always out there every day, and he was a great player. And for the Mariners, the one guy that really amazed me, just absolutely amazed me, was Ichiro, because this was a guy who wasn't a big guy, and he came here from Japan, and his ability, like his bat, the way he would hit the ball, and he would get so many hits, and he would do it. He was like a unicorn. He the way, and then he also can he chose not to hit the long ball. He was a guy that really was all about singles and making contact. So when I saw Ichiro for the first time, and I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. Obviously he played for a very long time, and a guy that again never won anything, but I believe he's got the most hits in baseball history in a season. I'm not.
Yes.
He does,
Yeah.
right, Jason? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think a guy like that was like, it was amazing to see a guy who I don't even think he was 6 foot tall, and he was thin, and he would just spray that ball all over the field, and it was absolutely incredible. And then another guy that, in a different way, was amazing was Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
I remember watching Barry Bonds in his peak years with the Giants. You couldn't pitch to him. I mean, this guy was putting the ball in the bay. And I remember, like, they would walk him a lot. And in my time, I've never seen a guy where it was almost to the point where you couldn't pitch to him.
Yeah.
And the degree of difficulty for, to be able to hit that many home runs and be that much of a threat that you're getting intentionally walked so many times, it was incredible. Steroids or not, I understand the PEDs and with Bonds, but he was a great hitter. I mean, just an amazing hitter.
He was. We won't get too deep into that, but yeah, he was. I mean, I remember that. I mean, I remember you just like you said, you couldn't pitch to the guy, and I was actually at a game once, the Braves and the Giants, and he hit a home run, and I just knew like I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna remember being in person and seeing Barry Bonds hit a home run. By the way, with my left hand here, I deftly maneuvered stat head, and yes, Ichiro in 2004 had 262 hits, which is the all-time single season record. He also holds 10th place on that list with 242 hits. So he was a hitting machine for sure.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, just real quick. He batted 372 that year, which is just insane. So yeah, so good stuff, man. What about what's one thing about the modern game that you love, and then also maybe one thing that you would change that you don't love so much?
I think the talent level of today's game is it's like never, maybe never, we've never seen it. There's so much talent, and I think pitchers throwing, pretty much all these guys throw 100 miles an hour or close to it, which is incredible. I don't, that was unheard of 20, 25, 30 years ago. You didn't really see that too often, but these guys today, from Paul Skeens to Tarek Skubal to, um, other guys, Otani, these guys are all throwing in the high 90s and in the hundreds, which is really incredible. If you ever, Jason, if you've ever tried to, I know that and you can, at the like your local carnival or whatever fair, you can throw a baseball as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, throwing my arm out and I was throwing like 70 and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, like how the hell did, how the heck did these guys throw 100 miles an hour, 90
Repeatedly.
times
Yeah.
repeatedly?
Yeah.
So I think that the athletes today in baseball are incredible. You look at Shohei Otani, he's like you know, huge guy, he's fast is light, one of the faster guys in the game. So I think that, that really sticks out a lot, just the athleticism and the talent of today's game. Even down your way, Acuna, I think Acuna is just incredible athlete. And so many other guys in today's game. I feel like the way they play the game, it's incredible how fast they are, how strong they are. Um, but I'm a little against some of the new rules in today's game.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to modify baseball a little too much. I think baseball is a feel game more than um, you know, a game of computers and analytics. I think there's, anybody that's played baseball knows it's a feel game more than it's analytics. So I think the analytics of today's game and some of the over modification of the rules is kind of tainting the game a little bit. It still
Yeah.
doesn't make it a bad game, but they're trying to speed up the game, which I understand to an extent. But you're limiting how many pickoffs you can throw to first base. You're limiting mound visits. The ghost runner I think is just horrible. Not that I want to watch a 6-hour game on a Tuesday night, but
Right.
some of the stuff is, I feel like they're going a little too far with the rules, in my opinion. And then something, in the game of the past, I think sort of what I was mentioning with Ichiro, I feel like a lot more guys back in the day would hit more for contact.
Definitely.
Um, Tony Gwynn was another guy that, he hit home runs, but he chose to hit singles. He would,
Yeah.
he was incredible. He could put the ball out of the ballpark, but he was trying to get on base. And then I also, some of the older baseball, I really liked Greg Maddux. You got to remember he was notorious for not throwing hard. His fastball was maybe in his mid to upper 80s,
Yeah.
but his placement was incredible. So that was really, I like some of the old school nostalgia as far as the crafty pitchers and these great hitters that would hit more for contact, and not so much today where guys are swinging for the fences and the batting average is as low as it's ever been.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a great game. I think the past and the present it's unique in itself, and I think that baseball is in a great place.
I agree. I would like to see some more contact. I think that is a thing of the past a little bit. Used to be automatic, and if you got in an 0-2 count, you choke up, trying to make contact, and now you got guys still swinging out of their shoes on an 0-2 count.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. All right, man. I know you're pressed for time. You got some little ones you got to take care of, so I'm going to give you a couple quick hitters here, some fun ones, real quick. So, favorite uniform of all time?
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I love all the old school uniforms. I don't know. That's one thing I'm stuck in the past with. I
Same.
love the old school Marlins, Florida Marlins, the
Yeah,
teal.
they
Those
should go
were
back to those. Yeah,
those were sweet. I like the Mariners old school uniforms as well. The A's had a lot of really cool uniforms back in the day, the green and
swinging
yellow.
A's, man. The '70s. That's good
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah, those were incredible.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say off the top of my head those three, and then
Those are
I,
good. Yeah, I like the. I would add the classic look of the Detroit Tigers. That hasn't changed a whole lot over the years. I really like those kind of clean white with just a script D. Good stuff. Favorite baseball sound? Crack of the bat, organ, crowd swell when there's a home run hit? Like, what's your favorite baseball sound?
Hmm. Um, yeah, that's a good question.
I've
I
got
would
one. Didn't say.
I would probably say when a guy gets the barrel on the bat and it's going. Again, I don't want to sound simplistic, but I think the long ball and the noise, the way these guys can barrel the ball, it's really incredible. It's not easy. Believe me,
No,
it's not easy to barrel a 95-mile-an-hour fastball and send it to the seats. That's very high difficulty.
it
So I
is.
would say the crack of the bat of the long ball.
I like it. Yeah, I was gonna say the sound of a ball hitting the mitt, like that fastball hitting the mitt, just that pop you get. By the way, real quick, I just remember this. I just saw this. You mentioned Greg Maddox. I just saw a great story about Maddox giving up a gopher ball to Jeff Bagwell in the regular season during a game against the Astros where the Braves were blowing them out. The game was, it was a blowout. He intentionally threw him a gopher ball that Bagwell hit out of the park to set him up for a pitch later in the playoffs because he knew they would probably be playing the Astros in the playoffs. That's
Wow.
incredible pitching. And I've
Yeah.
heard Maddox did all kind of stuff like that. Crazy stuff. All right. Back to the quick hitters. Two more. Hot dog or nachos?
Hot dog.
That's an easy one. I agree.
Yeah.
Here's a hard one. We'll get you out on a hard one though. Most underrated player in history. That's a tough one.
Yeah. There's a going theme now with Hall of Fame and then Hall of Very Good, right? That's the whole thing with
Yes.
some of these
Yes.
guys are. Yeah, that's a good question. I know we talked some Cal Ripken Jr. I know he's in the Hall of Fame, so that wouldn't make sense for him to be underrated, even though I feel like maybe he
I,
doesn't.
I feel like he could still be underrated in the Hall of Fame because the guy I'm kind of thinking of is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's a good question, man.
I should have prepped you for these.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
throwing
getting
them on
me.
you.
I'm thinking back then. I'm thinking present. I'm thinking not so present. For some reason, the guy that's coming off the top of my head, and I don't know why, it's Mike Cameron. If you can remember, he was
I
a
do remember
Mariner.
Mike Hammer. Yeah,
He
absolutely.
he was a really good ball player that maybe didn't have the longevity,
Yeah.
but he was a damn good ball player. In his little window of that time. I'll give you another name, Jason, that sort of popped in my head too. Maybe a guy, I know he's more recent, but I feel like he was a really, again, maybe the longevity wasn't there. And some of these guys, when they hit those mid 30s, they kind of really only the special players go into those mid 30s and still play at the top of the level. About Adam Jones of the Orioles, he's another guy that's popping up in my head. He
Yeah.
was a really good ball player for Baltimore. So I would say those are the two guys off the top of my head that are popping up. Because everybody else that's coming up in my head, I keep thinking, they're sure, they're probably Hall of Fame guys. You know, oh, here's one. I'm sorry. How about Nomar Garcia Parra?
Oh yeah. Injuries derailed.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
back when he was in Boston, it was Nomar and Jeter, and there were the Yankees fans and the Red Sox fans were barking at each other who was the better player.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say Nomar's definitely up there. He was, again, like you said, injuries, shorter window. He didn't play as long as Jeter. So those are the guys that are popping up in my head.
No, that's a really good one. There's a couple that came to mind. One of them, people are going to think I'm a little crazy, but if you think about it, Yogi Berra, he's remembered a lot now for the things he said, the funny phrases he had, the kind of quirky personality. But he was a great baseball player. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame
Yeah,
for his play, not his funny quips. So, uh, in fact, as a younger fan, I didn't realize how good of a player he was until I started kind of looking in the history of the game. I knew him for his funny sayings, but he was a great baseball player, and I think that's kind of lost on a lot of people now. They just know the funny side of it. And another one that's close to my heart, it's up on one of the committees for the Hall of Fame once again, is Dale Murphy. Murph was
yeah,
my hero as a kid, and he's always just missed out on the writers vote, and so now he is in the I forget which committee it is. He's up with one of the veterans committees that's going to vote soon, and I'm kind of hoping that they get him in so he doesn't have to go in later. Murph's not a young buck anymore, so I'm wanting him to get in before it's too late so he can enjoy it. So
Right.
those are two that come to mind. But hey, man, great stuff. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this for us, Nico. Looking forward to we're gonna have a season recap episode for the regular RAB podcast with you and I, and we're gonna have a guest. One of our other admins, Josh, is going to join us for this particular episode, and we're just gonna kind of look back at the season and our impressions of what happened in 2025. The awards are all handed out now. We know the MVPs, we know the Cy Youngs, the Rookies of the Year. So we'll definitely get into some talk there. So looking forward to talking 2025 with you, Nico, and also looking ahead during the off season to what's going to happen. We got the Hot Stove League. We're going to have some free agent signings, some trades going on, some all kind of great stuff to get us through these cold months. Colder for you, unfortunately, my friend.
Yeah.
In Connecticut, but than here in South Alabama. So, Nico, appreciate it, man. Enjoy your day, and we will talk when we record our next episode. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Jason. That was a blast.
Appreciate it. All right, so great opening segment there. Our interview with RAB podcast co-host Nico Maliko, one of my guys that's helped me navigate the 2025 season with our first season of our podcast. So if you're not familiar with our regular weekly podcast, myself, Nico, and our guy Bruce are usually the trio. We discuss the current MLB season, and we're going to have a season recap releasing soon. If you're listening to this on the first day of release, November 16th, then we should have our season recap out on Monday the 17th or by Tuesday the 18th at the latest. So be on the lookout for that. As myself, Nico, and a special guest, as Bruce is unavailable this week, we're going to have one of our Facebook page admins, Josh, join us to go over the season, talk about what we've seen. The awards are all handed out now, so we know who the Cy Youngs and the Rookies of the Year are and the MVP. So we'll talk about all of that and give a quick look ahead to the 2026 Major League Baseball season. So join us for that. In the meantime, let's finish this episode of A Fan's Journey with some more of you guys' stories. I've got 3 really awesome baseball stories. And, you know, these are personal stories, guys. And I appreciate so much the people that have contributed, sending in these stories, talking about family, talking about friends, great memories of the game. As I share mine every other week, I'm really having a lot more fun sharing you guys' stories. So please keep sending those to us. If you want to share one of your baseball memories or stories, please send that to us at baseballromantic77@gmail.com, or you can just DM it to us on our Facebook page if you'd rather. But get those into us. I've got a few more left to go through, but would love some more. And we'll just keep this series going as long as we have stories. So appreciate you guys already sending it in. So the first one today, this comes from one of our followers and listeners. And this is from Brian Johnston. So Brian tells us his story. He says his dad, Bradley Johnston, passed away on the morning of February 12th at the age of 71 after a 15-year battle with leukemia. So sorry to hear that, Brian. It's largely because of him that he's built such a huge passion for baseball, basically since the day he was born over 40 years ago. Brian says he was a huge Tigers fan back in the 80s, and he would often talk about how when he was 2 years old, that Brian would sit in front of the TV with his dad and block his view while he was trying to watch the 1987 American League Championship Series. Brian says when he was a child in the late 80s and early 90s, he would always have Tigers games on. He says he learned a lot about the game, but also bonded with him that way. When he was 5, his dad bought a set of 1990 Topps baseball cards. I remember those very well. Those cards are worth virtually nothing today, and they weren't the most visually appealing. They really were not. The colors on the front were often way off, not to mention those nearly puke colored backs. Correct. But when he looks back at those cards today, it brings back great memories of talking baseball and learning about cards with his family. When he was 9 years old, Brian says he decided he wanted the Cubs to be his favorite team. He said his dad had considered himself to be somewhat of a Cubs fan before that, but when he saw how much it meant to Brian, he took a huge interest in it. Whenever he came home from school and later also from work, if there was a Cubs game on, he would make sure that the TV already had it on when Brian got home. So that's pretty awesome. He says his dad went with him to his first game at Wrigley Field in 1996. He says they got to see Ryan Sandberg get a home run. His dad often worked second shift as a custodian, and he was allowed to bring newspapers home with him. When I woke up the next morning, the previous day's USA Today Sports, oops, sorry, I lost my place. USA Today Sports page would always be waiting for him, as well as their Baseball Weekly newspaper every time that came out. Really cool. Brian says when he was in high school, he spent endless time reading articles and studying box scores. And of course, he was always willing to talk with me about anything that he read. When he was 18 and still living at home in 2003, down the stretch and into the playoffs, they watched or listened to every Cubs game together. And it seemed like every waking moment from there wasn't, excuse me, like every waking moment that there wasn't a game on, they were talking about the team. On the day the Cubs clinched the division, sweeping a doubleheader against the Pirates, Brian says he had to work during the first game, but got home as the second game started. As that game progressed and the Cubs were moving closer to victory, that might have been the most visually excited that he ever saw his dad. He says, yes, I know that season ended very badly, but those are some of the best memories of his entire life. By 2016, he says he has long since moved out, but they still talked a lot about baseball. Brian's mom said that dad had cried after the Cubs' comeback win against the Giants in the NLDS because he knew how much it meant to me. We did get to watch NLCS Game 6 together when the Cubs won the pennant. After the game was over, they stayed up well into the early morning hours, sharing their joy and talking baseball. Fantastic stuff. Brian says minutes after Game 7 of the World Series was over, he called his parents. His dad told him that he was so nervous in the bottom of the 10th that he turned off the TV and listened to the ending on the radio. That's exactly what I was telling a story about last week, Brian. On if you got to listen to last week's episode, I was telling a story about in those tense moments, I used to listen to the radio broadcast as well. He said he also wanted to hear Pat Hughes call the final out if they won. He said that his dad was battling cancer at that time, but it brought a lot of happiness into his life, especially when he thought about how happy the win made me. I'm so thankful we got to experience a Cubs World Series victory together because I know there are a lot of people who didn't get that chance. Absolutely, absolutely correct. When he went into hospice in late January, the first time Brian came to visit, his dad had MLB Network on. And when Brian came into the room, he immediately started talking about programs they had been running about Greg Maddux and Mike Schmidt. He wanted to talk about how the Blue Jays signed Max Scherzer, even though he knew he wasn't going to be around to see this season. MLB Network was on almost every time Brian visited over the next 2 weeks. Even in his final days, it was something they could talk about. Brian says the Cubs and Tigers got off to great starts this year. The Cubs had missed the playoffs the past few years. And Brian had this grand vision that they and the Tigers were going to have a great year in his memory and maybe even meet in the World Series, which almost happened in 1984 when his mom was pregnant with him. He says when Father's Day approached, he decided he had to be at Wrigley Field that day. The Pirates and Cubs both scored 2 runs in the first inning. It was a tense pitcher's duel after that, as both teams traded zeros through 9 innings. In the bottom of the 10th, Ian Happ came to bat with a winning run on third base, and he hit a line drive that just got past the Pirates' second baseman to win the game. Brian says he couldn't help but think that Dad helped us a little bit out there, helped us out a little bit there. I know it's probably not true, but it brought me comfort to think about it. That's good stuff, Brian. Brian says the Cubs didn't have a strong second half, while the Tigers almost completed an epic collapse. True, sadly. As it got late into the season, I felt like my dream of a Cubs-Tigers World Series in honor of his dad was dying. And I eventually came to terms with the fact that even though baseball was one of the most important ways that I bonded with my dad, I can't rely on it for my happiness, especially when going through a difficult situation. Absolutely. 29 out of 30 teams' seasons will end in disappointment. Both teams won their first playoff series, however. When the Cubs beat the Padres, I again felt his presence, this time getting revenge for 1984. When both teams lost tough game 5s in the division series, while I was disappointed, I was at peace with it. The season really helped me through the grieving process and realize that life goes on. It's always another baseball season, right? No matter what happens. The moral of the story is this: don't let anyone tell you that baseball isn't important. Not everyone is a fan, and that's okay. But to somebody else, it might mean the world. And this year, it certainly did with me. Brian, that's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Very personal. And it's exactly the kind of story that we're looking for. It's exactly the kind of story that resonates with all of us as human beings and baseball fans. And absolutely shouldn't put all of our happiness into a sports team ever. But it is one of those things, baseball in particular, that I do feel like brings us some peace. And baseball is that sport, and I know they all do this, but there's something about baseball and the renewing of it in spring and there's always another baseball season coming, right? No matter what's happened. So it's something for us to look forward to for those of us who love the game. So Brian, thank you very much. Brian Johnston, thank you so much for sharing that personal story with us. This is why we're doing this, guys. That's a great story, emotional connection to your dad. Awesome stuff. Story number 2 comes from us from Jeff Bishop Jr. Jeff has been a loyal follower of our page, a loyal commenter and engager. He has a lot of common sense that he brings to our comment section. We appreciate that, Jeff. Jeff is a loyal fan of the Tigers, and we were following him all year as Jeff went through the Tigers' ups and downs this season. So, Jeff, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing this story with us. So, Jeff's story says that he was the year was 1988. He was 11 years old. So, me and Jeff, we were the same age. Jeff, I was also 11 in 1988. He says he was a youngster growing up in the Detroit area. He was already an absolute fanatic of baseball, with the hometown Tigers having won the World Series in '84, and fresh off a postseason run in '87 that broke his little heart in the end. In parentheses, Jeff says, "Damn you, Minnesota! Damn you, Twins!" I got a bone to pick with the Twins too from '91, Jeff. I understand. One morning when he was still asleep, his dad busted into the room, hollering at him to wake up and to put his radio on 98.7. Now, he says in big bold letters. Jeff said he was shocked and barely awake, but he jumped up and did what he said, still wondering what was going on. By the time he had the radio tuned in, it was just in time to hear the DJ say, "Congratulations to Jeff Bishop of Roseville on being the 5th caller," or whatever caller it was, but some backstory. Before he goes further, the radio station held these contests daily, and no matter what, the answer to the question was always Gordie Howe. That's good stuff. The trick really was to be the correct caller. It didn't really matter what the answer was. You had to be the right call. And anyway, on this day, his dad had won 2 tickets to Chicago to see the Cubs take on the Phillies in the very first night game under the lights at Wrigley Field. That's awesome. All games played at Wrigley prior to this game were day games that would be suspended if it got too dark. This was a big deal. This was a huge deal. I remember this. Even 11 years old, I vividly remember this. So Jeff says his dad and he were off to Chicago. It was a short plane trip, and they were there. They walked around downtown, joked around all day until it was time to go to the game. Good memories, I'm sure. Jeff says they got there, and it was everything magical about baseball that you remember from your childhood. Fans packed in the stands, great teams on the field, all the sights and nostalgia around him that I had only previously seen on WGN. So you got the Cubs kids, WGN, the Braves kids, TBS. And Jeff says most importantly, he was experiencing all this with his dad. The game got underway, and honestly, he doesn't recall the actual outcome of the game. We could look it up on Baseball Reference, Jeff. Because ultimately the game was postponed due to rain, but they did get 5 innings in. Jeff actually says we'll have to check it out on Baseball Reference. The highlight of the game to him was when Morgana, the kissing bandit, if you're too young to remember Morgana, YouTube that, stormed the field and planted a big smooch on Ryan Sandberg. Of course, Ryan Sandberg. So bummer, it rained, and Dad and I went back to the hotel. Not all was lost, though, because the Tigers were playing on TV, and we watched that in the hotel room, and we won. It says they went back the next day, but it is a time that he will never forget. Jeff says he loves sharing this story and hope that myself and all of you out there will enjoy it as well. Jeff, that's another fantastic story, connecting with your dad. We share a lot of the same memories in different ways. I mean, same age. I remember that game, how big a deal it was that they were going to finally play a night game at Wrigley. I remember, watching the Braves on TBS and the Cubs on WGN. So all of that is very familiar to me. And Jeff, again, we sincerely appreciate all the support you've shown our page over the last couple of years. So great story from Jeff. We got one more. This is from Tom D'Annunzio. I hope I did justice to your name, Tom, and thank you so much for sharing this story. So we'll wrap it up with this one, guys. Another great story from a listener. Tom also grew up as a Detroit Tigers fan. He says he grew up in the Detroit suburbs, so Tigers baseball was written into his DNA. He says his earliest memories are of sitting on folding chairs in the garage with his grandpa, listening to Ernie Harwell call games, including the '84 World Series. Can we just stop right there and appreciate grandfathers and their effect on us, even if they're not baseball fans, the amazing job that grandfathers do. I myself am not quite a grandfather yet. You can see I'm getting close. I will probably be a grandfather in the next few years, but looking forward to it because I want to pass the game down to my grandkids like it was passed down to me. Grandfathers are great. Baseball on the radio was great. classic baseball broadcasters like Ernie Harwell are great. These are the things that create this tapestry of romantic about baseball that we love so much. And the reason that we have the Facebook page and we do these podcasts is we're not making a fortune making money off of this. We do it because we love it and we love the game and we want to share that love with everybody else. And this is another great story that really fills out that romantic about baseball theme for us. So Tom says he really only went to a couple of actual games, and all of them were at Tiger Stadium, and all of them seemingly against the Athletics for whatever reason. He says he left home in the early 90s and in the early 2000s moved out west. He says he currently lives in Reno, Nevada, 2,000 miles away from Detroit. Reno is not exactly Tigers country, he says. He says he rarely sees the old English D, and when he does, he assumes the person is a Magnum PI wannabe. So again, for you, any younger listeners out there, if you need to Google Magnum PI, you'll see what he's talking about. Great show from the 80s, by the way. Awesome car and theme song. Tom says, fast forward to the 2025 season. So this year, the Oakland A's have left Oakland and are playing in Sacramento, so we all know. Quick drive from Reno. So he says he turned 50 in January. So his wife bought them tickets to see the Tigers play the A's. Of course, it was the A's again, he says. He said he was 10 the last time he saw a game. And so this was a rematch 40 years in the making. So on game day, they pulled into the parking lot. As the lot began to fill up and fans were getting out of their cars, he found himself in a sea of green, of course. In his Tigers gear, he was the odd man out, a stranger in a strange land, and it was intimidating. I've been the visiting guy at sporting events. It is a intimidating feeling. But he says that all changed as they approached the ballpark. Standing outside the main entrance was a young mother with her two boys. All three of them were in Tigers jerseys and hats. He said, what? Heading into the park, he saw more and more Tigers fans. They were everywhere. We were everywhere. He said it was overwhelming. He wept. He couldn't help it. He said, I was among my people for the first time in a very long time. He said what followed was a Tigers loss and eventual sweep, but the night was filled with high fives and fist bumps from people just like me. It was unforgettable. And he says, thank you for allowing him to share this. No, thank you, Tom. Another great story. And I really like that. Even though it was a Tigers loss, it was filled with high fives and fist bumps. It was unforgettable. Sometimes it's not about the winning and losing. Sometimes it's just about being at the game. And I've mentioned this before on our other podcasts and on the Facebook page, but some of my best memories of being at some games. I've been to many Braves games. I'm a Braves fan for those that don't know already. But connecting with fans from other places and other teams and being able to just talk ball with anybody. It's baseball just transcends politics. It transcends religion or nationalism. Just talk baseball. It's fantastic. And my wife and I have begun chasing ballparks, so visiting other parks, and we've met great people doing that as well, friendly people. And again, you can just talk baseball. You know, if you don't have anything else to talk about, you don't know anything about that person. If they're at a baseball game, you can talk ball. So it really brings a lot to the table. So 3 fantastic stories. Thank you again, Tom. Thank you again, Jeff. Thank you again, Brian, for sharing those. I've got a couple more in the bank that I can share on our next fans journey episode where we share the stories. So I need some more, guys. Send them in. Please share your story. Even if you don't think it's a great story, these are simple, but really cool, really awesome personal stories. So just send us your story. What did you like about baseball as a kid? What was your first experience with the game? Who taught you the game? What was that connection? Who did you bond with somebody? Like these guys clearly bonded with their dads and grandfathers over the game. So just share those stories with us. This is what it's all about. We love this. If you're chasing ballparks, if you've been to various ballparks, give us some stories about that. I can tell some stories about our adventures so far. We're just getting started. We've only hit 7 parks. We got a long way to go. This is great, guys. This is an episode we interviewed Nico. That was good stuff, hearing his story, and then 3 really cool stories from our listeners. So please continue to send those in and continue to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Pandora Podcasts has it. And this episode, because we had the interview with Nico, and I went ahead and did video for me as well doing these stories, will be on YouTube as well. So check us out on any of those platforms. And again, be on the lookout for the updated RAB regular podcast episode where we're going to recap the season. So again, this one is releasing on November 16th as I speak. And we're going to record the season recap episode on November 16th as well. So that one should be edited and ready for you guys by hopefully Monday afternoon, the 17th of November. And then also, if you haven't seen our ads on Facebook, we have a very special podcast series kicking off on Thanksgiving night. We're going to start a series that's all about historical baseball stories. The regular RAB podcast focuses on the current game mostly. We have this fans journey series we're doing on your stories and my personal fan story. And now we're going to have one dedicated solely to the great and unending amount of historical baseball stories. We're going to talk about players, famous games and World Series. But right now, we're kicking off with probably the most infamous baseball story ever on Thanksgiving night, episode 1 of our podcast series on the Black Sox and the 1919 scandal that rocked baseball and could nearly have brought baseball possibly to an end as we know it. So it's going to be a great time. That's probably going to be 3 episodes as I continue to write and edit those. Looks like it's going to come out to about 3 episodes. Wanted to start on Thanksgiving night. There's something about Thanksgiving night that I just think is that's a time to relax, kick back, eat some leftovers, grab your favorite drink, smoke a cigar, whatever makes you happy on Thanksgiving night. Take a load off, pop on our podcast, and listen to a great story about baseball. It's a story with twists and turns. It's a story that is so long ago that there's a lot of questions to this day about what actually happened and how it all went down. But we're going to do our best to sift through all that and give you guys a great story through 3 episodes, I believe is what we'll end up doing on the Black Sox. And then we'll move on to a new story after that as we near the Christmas season. But can't thank all of you enough who support our page, who support our podcasts. Thank you so much for doing that and tuning in to another episode of A Fan's Journey. Next week, we'll get back to my own personal journey. And we have hit the high point of that journey as being a kid and a teenager in 1995, the year the Braves finally claimed a World Series title in the city of Atlanta. So we'll talk about that next week, and then we'll follow it up with another episode like this where we share your stories and possibly have another interview with another co-host of one of our podcasts. So appreciate you guys. We will see you soon at the ballpark. Thank you.